foundational Black Americans, or are we part of the diaspora? I have no problem. I love the diaspora. I think I could still be a foundational Black American and be wired into the diaspora. Now, why? I don't think I have to make a choice. And so this brother is really kind of like a male version of a Harriet Tubman when it comes to leading the charge. I can't think of anybody who has done more in terms of making sure that Black people travel than Mr. Jay Cameron. And so Jay is visiting us this morning. I want to ask my brother, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Dr. Boyce? Thank you so much
Oh
for.
man, oh please go ahead, bro.
No, I
Sorry.
was just saying, thank you so much for bringing me on and your kind words. When you said it, coming from you, it just hit a little different just now. It was like, wow, okay, okay, and it just speaks to the level of respect that I have for what you do and how you empower our community through financial literacy and through just common sense conversation. So I appreciate all that you do as well.
Hey, thank you for saying that, man. That means a lot, 100%. And let me just I guess start from the beginning. First off, Jay through Maximum Impact Travel, he's been a longtime partner with the Black Business School and B1 Voyages. That was something that we created because I said, we shouldn't just be learning while we're sitting at home. We shouldn't just be doing things domestically. Part of empowerment and part of consciousness is expansion, right? Am I right? Give me a yes in the chat if you agree. And I don't know if you know this, but this morning this class is called financial consciousness, right? And consciousness is awareness. It's seeing things. It's exposure, right? That's part of consciousness. And so I almost find that every time I take a trip with you, like we went to Egypt, we went to Ghana together, and we're going to do some more trips. I always find my consciousness just grows by leaps and bounds. When I was in Egypt, it's one thing to know about Egypt. It's another thing to be in Egypt. And I think me and my wife were taking a carriage ride through the streets of Cairo at 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's like, okay, we're here. This is it. And it's very empowering. Do you see that response a lot from people like us?
100%, because for many of us, our exposure has been limited to the systems that we were groomed in, if you will. And so when we step outside of those systems, we start to see what's possible. And a lot of our frustrations come from not seeing or understanding that there is life outside of what we've become most familiar with. And I hear it over and over again. They're like, wow, I didn't know that. I didn't like right now, I'm in Ghana. And everybody's like, wow, I did not know. I thought it was like this because I saw this in a book, or my teacher told me this, or I heard it in this song, or someone who had never traveled told me this story. But there's nothing like seeing for yourself, because no one can make you unsee what you've seen or unhear what you've heard. And so when you talk about the expansion that comes, or the empowerment that comes, when you understand that there is more than our neighborhoods, more than our cities, more than our states, and there's a global economy that we have power in ways that many of us are discovering. When it comes to investment, when it comes to being able to build businesses, we start seeing the opportunities. And when you feel like you have opportunities, or you see or realize that you have opportunities, that empowers you even more. So it's so many different aspects to it. And the more exposure you have, the more opportunities you see. And it's almost like when I saw this in 2018, Dr. Boyce, I knew I had a responsibility to come back and share this with my community, because if I didn't share, then who was going to share? Because we were trying to, spend years trying to figure it out. And, what am I going to do with my money here? And how do I make this happen over there? And so when I've watched people transform just their mindset, and where they used to be fearful, or where they used to be hesitant, or where they never traveled before, now they're starting to travel. It's like one lady who's with us now, her name is Veronica, and she joined us in Egypt last year. And she said, I'd never been on a plane before. And so this is another group that we're working with. She had been with them. She came last year. She said, I'd never been on a plane before. I'm 63 years old. She said, but I got on the plane, and she said, you know what? I had my wings now. And so the day she saw me today, gave me a big hug. She said, I said, now you're in Ghana. And so that's empowering her to empower her daughter, to empower her granddaughter. So her granddaughter doesn't become 63 and never had left the country. Now, here's another one, Dr. Boyce, and then I'll turn it back over to you. We have a group in South Africa right now, and it's a 74-year-old pastor and his wife. And he posted on his page, he said, you know what? I wasn't excited about the trip because it was going to be long getting here. He said, but this is my first international trip. I said, wow, just at 74, his first international trip. He said, but I'm so glad I did it because I'm able to see the similarities in the cultures, and I'm able to see how we move and how we flow. So when you do or create these types of opportunities for people, they take it back home and then they process it how they need to process it. And as that happens, it's just like, this is how we change our community. This is how we change the circumstances we're in, because we're now having the exposure, and others can now take it and empower themselves and run with it and empower their families.
Wow. Well, what's interesting to me, man, is I know that sometimes um, fear is contagious. Sometimes among our people, in the sense that when I look at what's happening politically, and by the way, I should pause for a moment. If I start to glitch or something, or I freeze or anything, somebody let me know in the chat, because we've had that issue. So give me a yes if you can hear me okay. Let me know if I'm coming through all right. So basically, I see a lot of scared Black people right now,
Oh yeah.
particularly with what's going on in Washington and everything. And not just Washington, but what's happening with the economy. There's a slowdown. You got artificial intelligence coming along, which creates a lot of uncertainty, and there's just fear, right? And I find that fear is made worse when you feel like you are constrained in a certain space. Like if all I believe that matters in the world is what's happening right here in the U.S., then I'm probably going to be more afraid than if I say, well, I could go to another country, or I could go somewhere else and have a whole different experience, whole different reality. Um, have you seen that in terms of, like, I mean, think about this, right? You mentioned people who say this is my first international trip. That can indicate, you could make an argument that could be considered a lack of exposure relative to what they realize they should have done. Or someone who says in their 60s, I've never been on a plane. That makes me wonder if sometimes we are trained out of that fear to limit ourselves just for our own safety. Like, don't
Oh
don't
yeah.
go out across that street. Don't go downtown. There's too, you know what I mean? What do you think about that?
Oh, you're 100% correct. I had no interest in traveling. I was like, why am I going to travel? I have everything I need in the US. But the one thing that was missing outside of the US, or the one thing that was missing that I didn't realize, was the peace that came when I exited for a period of time. I love coming back to home. I mean, the DMV is home, Charleston, South Carolina, that's home. It'll always be home. My ancestors built much of what we see and what we're familiar with. But another point, I'm a dual citizen of Ghana and Sierra Leone, as well as the United States. And so what I would have never even thought that as being possible, but what it did was it gave me that I don't have that anxiety. So when things start going crazy in the US, I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna let me hop on over here to I can go to Ghana, I can go to Ethiopia, I have options because I can leave the madness of a news cycle that is intentionally designed to create anxiety, a news cycle that is intentionally designed to breed and promote fear and uncertainty. And so when you have uncertainty, now you become paralyzed. So when you become paralyzed, you become frustrated. And so now it becomes a cycle of stagnation. But when you know you have options and you can say, you know what, let me just take a break from this. You know what, I'm going to try something else over here. There's a level of therapy that comes with that, and there's a level of confidence that comes from that. And when you have confidence, especially financial confidence, when you know that you have the ability to make moves when others are afraid, now you say to yourself, okay, when all things are jumping off, you know what? I'm okay. I can do this. I can try this over here. And that's one of the things, to your point, Dr. Boyce. Absolutely. I see the fear, and I try to encourage people by example to say, I know the fear. I've lived in it. I used to be afraid to fly. Believe it or not, I used to be afraid to fly. And but now here is what's possible. And so when people like you and I, when people can see that there are those who look like me, who are actually living the life, then it inspires them to say, let me try. You know what? And the other thing, Dr. Boyce, is that a lot of times we don't think we have the resources because
Mm,
our culture tells us you know what, you can't do it. You can't
mm.
do it. It's not going to happen. It's for them. They have it. That they can do it. And then I just had to prioritize it. Once I prioritized it, then I found out what all I could do. And then I had to strategize it and had to be intentional about it. And that's why what you do is so important, is because you show people how to put together the strategies to open up these other doors for themselves. So yeah, to your point, yes, I see where the fear definitely becomes a problem and holds us back.
Yeah, so everybody, I want to do a quiz. If you were listening to Jay Careful, Jay Cameron, that's his name. You know he used one of my favorite words of all time. What's my favorite word when it comes to freedom and power and wealth and happiness? What's that word? Richard Knox knows. I see my man Richard and Andrea Hall, Natasha. There we go. There we go. The word options. You know, I really, it's funny, man. You know, here around here, we talk a lot about stock options, right? Just the way to make the money and all that. But the thing about it is, my brain goes way past the money. I'm not thinking about the money. I'm thinking about the wealth.
Yes,
And when you think about the wealth, the money is a part of the wealth, but the wealth is really what is your experience as a human being on this earth? You know, what is your experience? Like, are you happy with your life? Are you feeling good, comfortable, confident, and happy with your existence? You know, and that's about so much more than the money. There's a lot of really wealthy people who are miserable. And
yes,
my goal was never to create a bunch of miserable rich people. I want to create happy rich people, right? And so being rich is part of the process, but it's not the complete process. It's step one of probably 8 or 9 steps that you're going to have to take to get there. And so what you're talking about with that exposure, just I have options. I can go anywhere. I can be anywhere. I can, I can I am free. I'm truly free. That's such a powerful feeling. And it's almost something that can be a generational gift that's passed to the children, right? So for example, I imagine you've probably had people bring their children on trips like this. And
absolutely.
I would argue, and I'd like for you to elaborate on that. I would say that there's a difference between that child in our community who, traveled to 5 countries before they were 10 versus the one who didn't take their first international trip till they were 46. What say you on that?
100% again. A young lady named Aliana, she and her mother and her father also came on a trip to Ghana, but this was probably her 50th country, and she was 12 years old at the time. So her mother was very intentional about giving her exposure. This exposure gave her incredible confidence to where now she is doing house rehabs in the DC area. She's been on different television shows and everything. And now I think she just turned 16. And so when I see parents making the investment, there was one mother who brought her son and her daughter, young son and daughter, on a trip a few years ago. She actually took them out of school and brought them to Egypt. She said, this trip to Egypt is actually more important than whatever's happening for this week in school. And so she brought them. I watched another gentleman bring his entire family, his 2 young boys, and he and his wife and 2 young boys came, they happened to go to Egypt. And so I've seen this at least 10 times where families recognize that it's our responsibility to educate our children. It's our responsibility to give them the exposure. And here's something that's deep, and this hit me really hard, Dr. Boyce, when I, it was just me just kind of thinking about our recent ancestors and their sacrifices. And I thought about it. I said, we really have no excuse because we have access to everything they didn't have access to. So we have access to the capital, the resources, the information. But what it is when it comes to our mindset, a lot of times, that's what holds us back. That's the thing that's saying, well, I don't know if I can do it. I'm not sure. I heard this about this place and I heard this about that. And so we actually hold ourselves back many times. The other thing that I thought about was that you mentioned this when it came to FBA. I tell people all the time, I said, I don't have to pick one side or the other because I descend from both. And so if I cut one part of my ancestry and my existence off, I'm now losing a major part of who I am. I descend from greatness in multiple parts of the world. And if I can tap into the fact that I descended from someone who survived, or multiple people who actually survived crossing that Atlantic Ocean, let me go back to the very first people who came on those boats and they survived some of the most horrific conditions. I descend from a survivor or a group of survivors. So when things get tough and I look at, I'm complaining about what's going on around me, I'll stop and say to myself, I really have no excuse because what they went through, I'm pretty sure I wouldn't have done as well. But now their sacrifices, those who crossed the Atlantic and then those who built the nation that I was born in, when I think about that, I say to myself, I now have this responsibility to, one, be the bridge for others to help expose their children to it, but not just our children, but our elders. There's so many of our elders who are in their 70s and 80s who've never traveled. They've never had the interest, but now that it's in front of them, they've had a desire. Some of them had the desire, but they didn't know or didn't understand how to get there. But now, by creating these opportunities through B1 voyages, to take people and show them, it's like you watch our elders become children again. So when we talk about our children, many of our elders are still children. They're just grown up now, but they're children. I've watched our elders, the little kids, come back to life. And I went to one lady, I said to her, she was in Egypt. And she was so excited. She was buying the oil and she was standing there like, like a little kid waiting for candy. And I went over to her. I said, you know what? I said, I just saw a little girl come back to life. And she giggled. That's deep when somebody 75 years old start giggling. I said, but it's okay to giggle because this is what this is for. This is not, I tell people all the time, this is an assignment. It's like when we have been given the opportunity and the responsibility or the opportunity to get information, it's up to us to share it because who else is going to do it for us? Nobody's going to come to our community and save our community. Many people in the world see the Black community as a colony. They'll come in, they'll put the carryouts up, they'll put the beauty supply stores up, they'll put the liquor stores in, they'll buy the strip malls, and they'll go and take all of the resources out of our communities back to wherever Middle East or China or wherever. Who's going to come to our community and say, here's a bridge for you to be able to empower yourself, not to be codependent on someone else, but to empower yourself and to use the brain that you've been given to take your family to the next level. And when I see people do that, whether it's the children or the elders, there's something special that happens that no one can take away. And that's the beautiful part of being in this position. It's something so profound that I would have never imagined that I'd be doing it at this point in my life.
Wow, I love that. That's amazing. And everybody who, some of you have already traveled with us. If you have traveled, say something in the chat. If you took one of our trips, we are going to do another trip next year. We're doing a couple, and in fact, actually, we aren't just doing the trips that I'm on. You don't have to wait for me. If you go to b1voyages.com, somebody type that URL in the chat, b1voyages.com. There's a list of trips that are happening over the next year, and you can sign up for any of those trips. And also, the other added bonus is if you book a trip on that site, take a screenshot of your receipt, email our support team, and they'll give you $2,000 worth of free classes. You get free access to the Black Wealth Bootcamp, lifetime access. So that's just an added bonus so that you can learn and you can travel. So you learn, earn, and then go all around the world, or learn, earn, and return, as Dr. George Fraser likes to say. So feel free to go to b1voyages.com. Also, if you'd like to be notified and kept up to date on the trips that we're going to take together as a group, you can text the word travel to the number 87948. So text travel to 87948. and we'll keep you posted on everything. Okay, so one thing I'll say too, circling back on this, I feel like right now, as we're just really trying to find ourselves, and I'll tell you, Jay, I'm frustrated with conversations that are happening because I sense a lot of tension right now, largely because a lot of it's connected to what style of leadership you have, right? And right now,
Sure.
we have a pretty volatile situation kind of happening in the White House. Again, we just so you know, we got people in here that are Democrats, Republicans, in between. I don't judge any of that, right? So I want to be respectful to all sides. I know that's hard to do because everybody's such an extremist, but I don't want to be an extreme. I'm an extremist in one area, and that's I'm extremely black. And you know what I mean? That's where I'm extremely committed to freedom and independence and all these other things. I'm not an extremist. And what happens, man, is that I'll have people that will come to me and define my blackness by a political party. Like they'll
Oh
say,
yeah.
"Oh, if you're not a Democrat, you're a sellout," right? And then I'll hear somebody else. They'll say, "Well, if you are a Democrat, you're a sellout," and that bothers me a lot because I don't like other people telling me what my blackness is supposed to look like. To me, you are undermining my humanity. You're disrupting my freedom. You're telling, it's colonization. I don't think your blackness should ever be defined by what political party you're in. I just don't. Just like if I work for Burger King and you work at McDonald's, I can't say, well, you a coon because you work at McDonald's, right? We both on the plantation. We just got
Off on the
different
plantation.
masters, right? Right. So I'd rather say, hey, the blackest thing you can do is become free and independent and employ black people and build schools and support the community, right? So here's where I'm going at with this, man. I feel like what you're doing right now is extremely important because because when you have this sort of global view of your blackness and you get a chance to sort of see all the different ways to be black, and you go to a place like Ghana where everybody around you looks like you, and people love you because of who you are, not in spite of who you are, and it's sort of devoid of these insane stereotypes. I just really think that that's what we need. Like I feel like global exposure is really what we need so that we can elevate our consciousness and have higher vibrational conversations with each other. Like you and I, when you and I talk, I don't even know what political party you're in. I've never asked you like, hey, did you vote for that son of a bitch Trump, or are you vote for that Biden guy? I've never. You can
Right.
confirm it. I've never asked
We
you
have,
any of
we have
this
not.
because it's like, no, let's talk about something bigger. Let's talk about building for our people. Let's talk about education. Let's talk about what we're doing with family and things like
Sure.
that. Can you kind of speak to that? I almost feel like we have to become free to really have the discussions required to do what hasn't been done as well as I think it could be, which is really building the community and seeing tangible progress of growth. Right, like when people travel with you, it seems like you're watching them grow. Right,
I'm
please
watching
go
them
ahead.
grow. And really, this is my protest. That's what, so that you understand. What I do is my protest to the intentional uh, restrictions that have been placed around our community for so long. And so I said, well, what have I lived through and seen? I lived through cycle after cycle of things pretty much staying the same from when I was born until now. So I'm looking and I'm saying, all right, I'm not going to gaslight myself and tell myself that everything is, you know, changing at this rapid pace. There have been some changes, but I'm just looking. I'm saying the results are moving pretty slow. So what is the cause of this? And then what I started doing when I started exposing myself to other cultures, I started exposing myself to other conversations. And so there's some conversations that some people are just not having. They're focused on action. So when I say a protest, there are a lot of different ways to protest. I can protest with my words or I can protest with my actions. And sometimes you don't have to be loud the way everybody else has done it in order to make the impact or make the statement. So I said, what is one way that we can implement something that will transcend and will last for generations? I said, if people get a chance to just see and be exposed and know that there's something larger than the same conversations that they've been having for the past 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, a light bulb will go off. And it might spark something. And so when you talk about the transformation, Dr. Boyce, I'm looking at people say, a lady came to me today. She said, she said, I'm learning things I've never learned before. She said, I need to start thinking a little bit deeper. When she said that, and she looked like she's probably in her early 60s, she said, I think I need to just start thinking a little bit deeper because there's just things I didn't know and I'm learning. And I said, that's the goal right there. For people to be empowered within themselves. And to sometimes propaganda is designed to keep a cycle of conversations going that will never go anywhere. It's like the never ending debates. I've watched some people just debate each other and they're never going to convince each other or change each other's minds. So now all of that energy has been spent on that conversation, which amounts to everyone coming back to the same conclusion that they came to the conversation with. I said, I can't be on that gerbil wheel or hamster wheel of conversation. I need to see some actions. I need to see something tangible. And that's why, like over the past 4 years, we've taken more than 2,000 people back to the continent of Africa and beyond. So now all of these people have been impacted. All of these families have been impacted. Those who've been watching the documentaries and been following the journey, they've been impacted. Influencers have been impacted. So that right there is what I look at to say, there's certain conversations I just can't, I don't have anymore. I mean, I have my opinions about various politicians. I can see the stuff on both sides. And so I just got to sit back and say, oh, yeah, I see what's going on. But I look at the larger system that funds them. I look at the results. I go back and study historical context, and I go beyond 100 years ago. I want to go 200 years ago, 300 years ago. Take me back 500 years and help me understand why things are the way they are. What happened at the inception of this country? What was going on before this country even got started? What was happening in Haiti and in Brazil and in the islands and what we now know as Central America and other parts of South America? What was really going on the continent? Are we so different? Because sometimes we think that they were, I hear this thing all the time, I don't want to go to Africa because they sold my ancestors into slavery. I said, now, first, I said, that's one story that you have heard from who? And then I said, but do you understand that if, let's say that is the case, there were still people who were left behind, who lost their families, who lost their villages, who were fighting against the very entities that were creating the havoc. They were fighting against the British and the Dutch and the Portuguese and the Spanish and the French and the Germans and the Belgians. There were people who were vehemently fighting against these colonial interests and imperial interests, just like how we've been fighting in the U.S. But see, when you don't know that, you hear one person say, they sold us. But what about the ones who didn't sell? What about the ones who were fighting against it? What about the people in Namibia who were standing up to the Germans and the British? What about the Zulu who were taking it to the British and the Dutch? What about when you go over to Kenya and how they were taking it to the British? What about the ones who were fighting the Arabs in the East? You see, when you start putting all of this together, it's like there were people fighting this same system all of this time. But if I'm sitting in the US, I'm thinking that we're the only ones that went through it. What about down in Brazil and how the indigenous people and the Africans were fighting the Portuguese? And then when you come down into Haiti and what was happening with the French and how the Haitians actually defeated the French, but then the French came back and how the Haitians had to pay the French reparations in order for their freedom. Just the Italians over in Ethiopia and Eritrea. So you start going around the whole continent and you see that this story is much larger. Once I got that, Dr. Boyce, it was like, okay, this is a global system. It's economic. It's imperial as well as colonial. There are a lot of different layers in it. But now that I'm understanding a broader context, it's important for me to bring that information to us, because once we understand with our 1.4 to 1.7 trillion dollars of investing power, now we can redirect our mindset. We can redirect our priorities. We can redirect those options to say, maybe I don't have to be the consumer that they have trained me to be. Now I can perhaps invest in other places. Let me just learn the systems a little bit. Let me go visit and see the options and the opportunities that are there. So when that started happening, I'm watching people move around the globe. I'm watching our brothers and sisters who are dealing with mental health challenges. They're dealing with physical health challenges. They're just trying to get some clarity with their life. They're finding places to live all over the globe, whether it be Panama, whether it be Ghana, whether it be South Africa, whether it be in Bali, wherever it is. They're understanding that they're not limited because of this unique position that we've been placed in the world as Black Americans, because we still have our American dollars, but we also have this genetic connection to so many other parts of the world, and we feel it when we get there. It's deeper than just getting on a plane. We feel it. We see our cousins and aunties when we go all over the world, and it's a beautiful thing.
Tell you, man, one thing that's interesting to me is that, when you really think about the power of that partnership with African Americans and just different countries in Africa, it becomes really powerful. Um, and by the way, before I even get to that point, I want to make sure everybody knows if you want to travel with us on our next trip, just go to b1voyages.com, be the number one voyages.com. Also, you can text the word travel to the number 87948. I'll keep you guys notified. We're taking our education international. We're not gonna be trapped by domestic thinking. We're not domesticated Negroes. Can we agree that our goal is not to be domesticated, right? We want to be free. We want to be out here in the jungle fighting and killing what we eat and winning and succeeding and building and owning. Give me a yes if you agree. I don't want to be domesticated. So stop being, that domesticated stuff. Look at where it's gotten you. Look at where what we created from that. We're not doing that no more, right? But let me give you all just a taste in terms of or a perspective. How about that? In terms of just the power of that those partnerships, and they're already happening. There's so many people taking trips over to the continent. But Dr. Ken Harris takes entire delegations over there once every couple months. There's another brother that teaches at Vanderbilt that I bumped into when I was in Ghana. I can't remember his name. Dr. Ade. I don't have his first name, but he's going over there a lot. And Lamar Tyler, you and I both know Lamar, and he's
Yes.
he's he's I think is he there now? I saw a post he had of Ghana on his page yesterday.
Not right now, but he's going
Okay,
back.
yeah, but look, Lamar's is on the move. Can't keep up with him. Him and Master P is hanging out. But here's the thing. Uh, African Americans are so important to the future of the world and the future of Africa because African Americans are very wealthy. We're the wealthiest Black people on the planet. But when you measure wealth based on per capita GDP, or better yet, just overall economic power, right? 1.7 trillion is our collective annual income, if you will, or Black spending power. And I think the GDP of the total continent of Africa is about 2.5 trillion. So us at this little $40 million pocket, we're kind of like the economic Michael Jordans of Black people. If you add Jordan to a basketball team, you're gonna win some championships. Now, let me tell you, if you remember, if you know sports, and I don't know if are you a sports fan, Jay?
I am. I am. I
Okay,
am.
so you might be able to. I know you're old. You look younger than me, but I know you're a mature man, and you remember Michael Jordan had a problem. If you remember in the '80s, he could not win a championship. You
Right.
know,
He
they
couldn't.
they
Couldn't.
they would write, yeah, very serious journalists would write articles where the title would be, "Will Jordan never win a championship?" Right? Because he was kind of this one man island, and he would say silly, immature things like, "Well, what is it?" They would say, "There is no I in team, Michael," and he said, "Yeah, but there's an I in win." Right? And so he would win, the scoring title, and he'd win a few games. But when it came time to try to win a championship, he kept getting beaten because the Detroit Pistons and other teams, they had a system. And a system will almost always defeat an individual. So as Black people, we're up against systematic racism all around the world. And
Sure.
those are kind of like our Detroit Pistons in terms of our ability to win a championship because we have allowed others to make us feel isolated. So here's why I'm bringing up Jordan. Because we are the Michael Jordan economically of the diaspora, in my view, we need to get what Michael did. We need to level up. Michael did a couple of things that made him a champion. Number one, he started to incorporate his teammates. He realized that in order to win a championship, he needed Scottie Pippen. He needed Luke Longley. He needed Steve Kerr. He
Oh
needed
yeah.
Dennis Rodman, right?
Oh
He
yeah.
needed those guys. And when he got those guys, he became so much more powerful. He was still Michael Jordan. He was still, winning MVPs and all that. But the difference was he was also winning MVPs and getting championship rings. The second thing Michael had to do, which is this is what we're going to do because we are the Michael Jordans of Black economics, is he developed an all around game. He expanded his skill set. In the beginning, he was a leaper and a scorer, but then he became a defensive monster because he worked on his defense. He also became his jump shot got better. He
Absolutely.
became a great passer, right? So ultimately, my point is to say that if you look at us again, we're the Michael Jordans of Black economics. We are 1.7 trillion. Number one, you got to get your teammates. You got some powerful teammates in Africa. You got entire countries with massive populations that you never learned about in school. Nigeria has 250 million people that want to be your teammates. I'm 33% Nigerian. Shout out to all of Nigeria. Ethiopia, 135 million people. Egypt, 118 million people. The DR, Congo, 112 million. Tanzania, 70 million. South Africa, 64 million. Kenya, 57 million. Sudan, 51 million. Uganda, 51 million. Algeria, 47 million. Angola, 39 million. And I could keep on going. I haven't even partially gone down the list, right? And one of the things you should understand about wealth is as you develop your skill sets, right? And this is what we do. We're developing our skills. We're not just learning how to be employees. Again, Michael just knew how to be a scorer. We're expanding the way he did. We're learning how to be builders, owners, investors, all these other things, right? So we're coming with a different skill set and we're connecting with our teammates. And that's what's going to help our people win championships around the world. Does that follow? Give me a yes if that analogy makes sense. Maybe I'm just trying to. I'm thinking about the Michael Jordan thing today because I want us to win. But I'm loosely tying this, hoping that somebody can see where I'm going with this. This is the vision, right? And so here's where I'll throw it back to you, Jay. Africa, the African economy is powerful. Again, this reinforces the fact that these are our teammates, and our teammates are damn good. Just like Rodman was great, and Steve Kerr was a great shooter, and everything else. The African economy in the next century is gonna be great because they are smarter than the Europeans who try to control the world. Let me explain. Even the Chinese fell for this. 20 years ago, anybody remember this? They used to tell everybody that the population was getting too big, right? Remember that? Bill Gates was going around the world
Yeah.
saying we got to have, birth control and abortions for
Oh yeah.
everybody so that the population doesn't get too big because we can't feed everybody. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Anybody remember that? Just 20 years ago, your so-called smart people were telling you don't have children. China implemented the one-child policy because they felt their population was growing too fast, right? 20 years ago, they were doing this. Now, those same experts, what are they saying now? What are they saying now? They're saying, "Oh my God, we don't have a high enough replacement rate. The population is dwindling off, right? Europe is dying. America, we don't have enough people. The Chinese don't have enough, right?" But who was smart enough to not do that? Who was smart enough to ignore the nonsense? It was Africa
Absolutely.
because they're wired in to the universe, to God, and God said, "No, you're supposed to have kids. You're supposed to be, what was it? Reproduce, be
Be fruitful and
bountiful."
multiply. Be fruitful and multiply.
Determined, right? And they're
Yeah.
like, "No,
Have two lovely
we're
for you.
not gonna listen to you. We still gonna have our 8 kids." So as a result, Jay, and I know this is a long-winded point. I hope that this helps the discussion because I want the ball to go back to you. Basically, Africa's positioned to be the economically dominant force on Earth around the world in the next century, next 100 years. So, by us taking our babies to the continent and exposing our people to these and forming these connections, building those bridges and roads, that creates tremendous possibility, say in the year 2070, 2080, 2090, and beyond, where those connections lead to really powerful economic relationships. Remember, investing in wealth is about looking forward, not just looking at what you see right now, looking forward, making a plan. So Jay, did I make a point here? Did that point make sense to you? And do you have any thoughts on that, please?
Made perfect sense. And I see it. I see it as I'm here. And when you understand the connections, and I think this is what's so key when those of us who are from the US or other places that have access to the capital, when we tap into our African roots and really embrace it and not reject it and not try to be everything but that, because we got people out here, I don't want to be that. But wait, enough money come their way, they're going to switch that tune real quick. But when you understand it and you feel the organic aspect of it, you'll see the opportunities and you'll understand the importance of it. And you'll say, okay, let me learn the things that have been hidden from me, because there are certain things that have been hidden by design. And really, it goes back to identity. Dr. Boyce, you talked about being 33% Nigerian, from the region of Nigeria. So for many of us, we don't have an interest in that. But when you tap into it and when you go to that airport, because every time I go to the airport in Nigeria, they think I'm Nigerian. They're like, wait a minute, what are you doing with this passport? You look Igbo. What are you talking about? You are not, you do not have a US passport. What do you mean? And I've had this argument 3 times, a friendly argument. It wasn't a bad thing. But I'm walking around Nigeria and I'm looking at people who look just like my family. It's no, so when you tap into that connection and you see the strength and the resilience of Nigerian people, um, and you understand, of course, they have the reputation, they have a different kind of reputation in different parts of the world. But when you see the positive aspects of it and knowing that you descend from that as well, and then you can go get the resources and start to build. Now it's a process, don't get me wrong. You got to learn and do your due diligence and really have cultural sensitivities and not try to go in and make them American and all of that. But if you come in with the right attitude and the right understanding of the assignment that you've been given, then I'll tell you like this, my business, I would have never thought that my business could do what it does. And it's because of my expansion into the continent with the right intentions. And not just the continent, but into South America and into the Caribbean. Because of that expansion, then and my willingness to embrace that side of it, I see where the sky's the limit just because of that. The relationships that I've built, the opportunities that I've created on the continent in the different countries, as well as for those in the United States. And so when you see that it's not either or and it's both, then it just unlocks a potential and opportunities that you might not have otherwise seen.
Wow. Well, I love it. I'll tell you what, I hope everybody will consider traveling overseas at some point. Let me know if you're already doing it or if you plan to do it at some point. And even if you already do it, I would encourage you to consider doing it more. I've traveled overseas a lot. I realize I need to do a whole lot more. A lot of those countries that I mentioned on that list, I have not been to those countries. And so there's a big earth for you to explore. And it doesn't it's not so it's something that's in your budget if that's also something that's in your heart and in your vision. So what is your plan for your life? Are we gonna sit here and argue about the White House for the rest of our lives, or we're gonna go and do something different so our children have an option to do something different, right? Everything's about options. Traveling gives you options. So I want to say thank you. I hope everybody will give a digital thank you to our good friend Jay Cameron. And Jay, we're partnering with Maximum Impact Travel on several trips. And if you guys want to join us on any of those trips or join other members of the B1 community, just go to b1voyages.com. That's b1voyages.com. And also, you can text the word travel to the number 87948. So text travel to 87948. And if you go to b1voyages.com and you go to any of the trips, just take a screenshot of your receipt, email support@theblackbusinessschool.com, and they'll give you lifetime access to the Black Wealth Bootcamp. And that's $2,000 value. That'll be something where you can learn and you can also travel at the same time. You can share it with your family. So feel free to take a look and participate. And I'll keep you guys posted on trips that we take together and the trips I'm going to take. Quick housekeeping thing. Some of you were asking questions about stocks. I didn't get a chance. I was going to talk about some of that, but I didn't remember we had a guest today. But so I want to respect our guest. So, but we are going to do stocks this afternoon. So if you're not in the Stock Market Investors Club, you can feel free to go to drboycestockmarket.com. That's drboycestockmarket.com. There's a lot to talk about. The market's making moves. So we'll be doing that later this afternoon. So God bless you, everybody. Have a good day. Thank you to our guest, Jay Cameron, my man.
Thank you, sir.
I'm sorry.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, good to see you, man. Can't,
Good to
can't
see you
wait
as
to
well.
hang out again with you overseas, man.
Yes, sir.
Good man right here. I have so much appreciation and respect for what he does, and I just want everybody to know that. So God bless you, brother, and I look forward to seeing you soon. All right.
Likewise.